Elevation Nation, to say we have a treat for you all today would be an understatement. This has been our most highly requested episode guest of all time. As soon as we released the first one, we got pings, emails, DMs asking us when this guest was coming on again. But we had to give him time. We had to give him a year. If you remember back to our last episode with our guest, John Camardella, you will know that he made a pretty big bomb drop at the end of the episode, announcing that he was taking a year-long sabbatical to go to the Harvard Divinity School in a first-of-its-kind, revolutionary program that will let him refresh our memories on. So we had to give him a year. We gave him a year. I bugged him pretty much every month saying, when are you going to have free time to come back on the episode, on the podcast, have another episode? Finally, it's summer, and John, you are back on Elevation Nation. We are so excited to have you because we just have the best conversations ever. So welcome back. We're so glad you are now a graduate and you are with Elevation Nation tonight.
Yeah, it feels like it's been forever since we talked, and it feels like we talked yesterday. That's how it's sort of feeling for me tonight. I'm being with you, but appreciate the invite back and really looking forward to the conversation here.
It's got to be like 18 months plus. And you're right, it does feel like it's been a while, but at the same time, it does. Like, I remember very vividly the conversation that we had the night it was on, and I walked away from that conversation with so many thoughts. And what's great about this, I mean, I've been excited about this for a long, long time. Elevation Nation, you know how philosophical and deep I get. And who better to have and talk about philosophy and deep intellectual thoughts than John Camardella. But John, for the people who are new to Elevation Nation and maybe haven't gotten a chance to know you or listen to your episode, we would love to give them a little bit perspective about yourself. So we got to start it off just as you did way back then. Let's hear your elevator pitch.
Well, about a month I'll be starting my 20th year of teaching at Prospect High School here just outside of Chicago in the lovely suburb of Mount Prospect. Incredibly grateful for that job. It's meant the world to me, and now my wife, my kids, my family. I absolutely love this community. And in that process, I developed a world religion course that I started teaching in 2009. And then back in 2015, 2016, got to participate in writing the first set of national guidelines to help public school teachers around the country teach about religion in academically sound and constitutionally appropriate ways. And decided about a year and a half ago to throw my hat in the ring and try and get into Harvard Divinity School for this new inaugural program. They call it the Master's Degree in Religion and Public Life, which I just graduated back in May, and am so excited to return to my classroom at Prospect here to be with all those seniors. I've got about 135 coming up this fall semester across 5 sections of religion, and also excited that I will be on staff at the RPL at Harvard Divinity School this fall as an education fellow, as we look to take this work broader and train administrators and teachers how to do this well in service to their students and their communities.
Unbelievable. It's incredible. I'm sure your students are really pumped to have you back, right? Is Prospect pumped to have John Camardella back? Are they more pumped to have you back than you're pumped to go back?
Park, I think the real honest thing here is I feel like a first-year teacher. The last time I was in the hallways with students in a natural environment, the seniors that will be in my class were freshmen. And then I mean this, they have no clue who I am. I retired, early retirement from basketball. I wasn't in the building last year. The year before that, we all know, was predominantly remote and hybrid. So I am I'm very excited to reinvent myself a little bit. I'm excited to have to earn the trust of my students again, and to try and help them see all the possibilities that are in front of them, and make this class what I hope to be the best learning experience of their high school career.
It is pretty funny because for those that don't know, Prospect, decent sized high school. John has his class full every single semester, and everyone who takes his class tells other people to take his class because he's that great of a teacher and it's that interesting and important of a topic. But it is kind of funny, it's been a few years since you've been back in the classroom. And so those older siblings that probably told their younger siblings, you have to take this class, you weren't there for the past couple of years. So it is kind of funny that you do have to reinvent yourself. I have no doubt in my mind that you will do that very quickly, and there will be a long line and a wait list to get into your class. As always, one of the highlights of my professional career was actually coming in and speaking to your class. So hopefully we'll be able to do that again because that was an absolute blast. But
wait. What did you speak about? I'm really curious.
Oh,
I don't know this.
You didn't even know this story. So
No.
I went in during the Judaism section, and we talked about the concept. I just returned from Birthright, going to Israel for the first time, and I shared pictures and stories from that trip, from a cultural perspective, from a religious perspective, and how it impacted me and my life, and answered a bunch of questions for the students. So it was awesome, a really cool experience to be able to share that with other people. Not the most Jewish demographic, so I think what I was teaching was actually helpful, whereas where I grew up, most of those kids actually ended up going on Birthright with me. So it was nice to have that impact to students that were a little bit net new to Judaism as a whole. It was a blast. So, John, I want to get into a little bit of what happened at Harvard, right? I had the privilege of coming to visit you in Cambridge for a week. It was an absolute blast. We had a great time. But I will say, as someone who's not extremely intelligent, when I walked on the campus, if anyone's ever been to Harvard, you feel something. You feel this energy. You feel this eliteness almost, this holy shit, I'm at Harvard. This is the best school in the world probably. So this was a crazy concept. You going to Harvard out of kind of a little bit of nowhere after some work. Now you were a graduate of Harvard. You spent a year there. What was that like, your first day on campus, walking around and saying, okay, I remember you showing me your student ID. You're like, I am literally a Harvard student. How did you wrap your head around that?
Well, I think people come to understandings and abilities at different times in their life. It took me until my 40s to be able to apply and actually get into an institution like that. I think that's why I have so much patience and love and respect for people who might struggle during their teenage years, as I did. That it just, people hit it at different times. And I would say about my graduating class, there were 11 of us in this inaugural program. Ready? And the youngest of the 11 of us was 27, and the oldest was 68. So if that gives you a range of 11 students, so that was sort of my very close knit group. There were 11 of us in this inaugural program. Then you expand it out to the Divinity School, and there's a few hundred people. Everyone from master's students to doctoral to postdoc students. And then obviously you expand it over the university, which is, I believe, 12 different schools. And so the best thing I could say is, like, yes, there's Harvard, but then there's like Harvards. There's a bunch of microcosms. And so I took classes at 4 or 5 different campuses. I had classes at the Kennedy School of Government. I audited a class at the law school. I took a January term class at the business school, and spent most of my time at the Div school. And every one of those campuses is different in its own unique ways. And so that's what I would say is, like, yes, there's this thing that's on sweatshirts and, I don't know, has the brand recognition of like Coke and Nike. But then there's just really small communities, and I just found such a home and a peace and serious challenges in at the Divinity School. I'm forever grateful for that year that I spent there in Cambridge.
So you were there for a year. I mean, a year, it's funny, I'm getting older and I'm starting to realize that a year is actually not a lot of time and it flies by really fast. And it's kind of scary. I'm like, when people talk about a year, I'm like, oh, wow, that's actually not a lot of time. When if you asked me 5 years ago or maybe 4 years ago, I'd be like, dang, like a full year? You're telling me this is going to take a year for that to happen? Like, nah. But I guess with maturity, you understand a year flies by like that. Did your goals and your expectations when you were going to Harvard, like let's talk about how those compared to when you left. Did they change like crazy, or was it exactly what you expected?
I went in with big plans about what I wanted to research and write about. And I've never had that much time and space in my entire professional life. From the minute I graduated, when I graduated college when I was 21, I signed my contract at Prospect when I was 21 and turned 22 before I started, became the head basketball coach at Prospect when I was 25. I've never had a year to just read and sit and contemplate and think about what I wanted to do with the second half of my career, let alone the second half of my life, which was an unbelievable privilege, unbelievable gift. My wife and my mother, without the two of them, I could have never have done this. But to answer your question, I went back in with huge plans. And I met with my advisor, I met with some scholars, met with some professors, I workshopped with some classmates. And at almost every single turn, the answer was no. Like, that's not feasible. That's not doable. And my whole point was like, hold on, I have a year to read and write. And they're like, it's too broad. What you're trying to do is too big. You're trying to attack too much. And so I went in wanting to rewrite high school curriculum. I went in wanting to rewrite aspects of the undergraduate dual credit course I teach. I went in wanting to rewrite some of the graduate courses I teach. I went in wanting to redesign. I have a parent program where every 3 weeks I open up the library and parents of my students and now community members just come flooding into the library. I wanted to rewrite that. And then I also wanted to go at this program to train superintendents, administrators, and teachers. And so I'm going in with, I think, some pretty healthy work ethic and was told no a lot. And so the first month was a lot of me wrestling with being away from home. I commuted every weekend. So I would fly out Monday mornings from O'Hare. I would land late morning at Logan. And I would either take public transportation if it was nice out or an Uber if it was raining. And I would shop, I would do my laundry, and then I'd hit the library and take up meetings. And I would study all week, go to class all week, and then I would fly home on Fridays. And the amount of times I was told no, or rethink this, or be more precise, or this needs to be more concise. I don't know how I would have handled that when I was in my 20s. And instead, I really saw this as people who cared deeply about my work. Many of them didn't know me personally yet. They were getting to know me, but they cared about me enough to tell me with their level of expertise what would work and what would not. And I'm forever grateful for that initial month because I had people tell me the truth. And it worked. I can't be more excited, more proud of the work I accomplished. But that was only because I was told no, or change this, or fix this, or change the angle of this so many times in that initial month.
It's so interesting, the concept of maturity and being, I don't know, critiqued as opposed to when you're younger, because to your point, John, they were looking out for you and trying to help you. But, Parker and I have a whole podcast on mindset, and you can do whatever you put your mind to and prove people wrong. So when people come at you and say, oh, you can't do this, sometimes people who are really bold and brave and have a lot of mental fortitude, they want to say, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. I can do this. And I think there's a very difficult internal conversation that you need to have with yourself when you are approached in those situations. Where is it someone who's saying no because they're jealous or they don't get it or whatever it may be, and then therefore you want to prove them wrong? Or is it someone saying no because they want you to succeed, but they want you to refine it and think about it and develop it into something more strategic? And that is really difficult, I think, to navigate and figure out, right? There's a lot of young people who just say, F the haters. Like, no, I'm going to prove you all wrong. It's tough.
Quick comment on that. I mean, think about it. Harvard being the first institution in the Western Hemisphere, right? I think the founding was 1630 or something, right? But I mean, those universities came up initially for ministers, right? So most of those early Ivy Leagues were for ministers. But then, they became pretty much producers for the market, right? In a very capitalistic way. And so I think where we get at now, to your point, is that young people, a lot of my alums, a lot of the young people I still stay in touch with, at times they feel used by the system, right? And I think has me so excited for the younger people in your generation, and even those people in their 20s, hitting their 30s, like, you're conscious enough to realize that what got all of us here is not what's going to get us there. And I think that's where the university system has to change. It has to start to look at, and in a place like the Divinity School, like, come on, nobody goes to Divinity School for financial gain. Like, I went into debt just to be around people that love to talk about God and purpose and meaning and contribution, right? Like, nobody goes there. And so with that financial burden or expectation completely eliminated, there is a very different energy on the Divinity School campus than there might be at the business school or law school. Okay. I just wanted to be honest, but not judging, but just it's a different energy. So I think that's, for any of the young people listening, to just keep saying that to yourself, that it's wonderful to challenge that what got us to this point it's not what's going to take us to where we need to go. It's not what's going to take you where you need to go, right? And so what prevents school from being meaningful and, dare I say, fun? What prevents your job from being meaningful and purposeful and fun? Like, I just think about it all the time. Like, if you encounter an unsolvable problem, I think we're getting the questions or the categories wrong. I think we have to rethink the questions we're asking about the problems that currently present themselves. Because if we keep asking the same questions and the problems persist, we're not being creative enough with our line of questionings. We're not categorizing things correctly. And I think that goes for the university system. I think it goes for jobs. I think it goes for family. Anyway.
I have all these thoughts in my head right now about this concept of just no, because, I'm going to flip to Sam's point on its head a little bit, because I feel like as you grow up as a young person, you go through K through 12 and you have teachers to tell you no, rethink this, right? You have teachers who are sitting there and want to be there with you and tell you no, rethink this. Then you get to college and it's taken a step further. But then when you graduate school and you go into the workforce, from what I've seen and what I've heard in the conversations I've had, actually, I think that people have a hard time telling other people no and allowing people to just run, because it's easier to just say, I'm not going to say anything or go for it than say no. And I think it's a challenge for young adults because they think everything is right then. I don't know. This is something that I've like, this candor culture has disappeared, especially over the last few years, because we're not next to each other. many of us are virtual. I have all these thoughts about this. So, John, I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
In my experience the last year, I would agree with you prior to this year's sabbatical. And if there's one thing this last year in a fairly intense academic environment, I found the opposite. People, if someone wasn't comfortable with something, they would just say it. If someone disagreed with what you said in class, right? Time is relative, right? We say, like, what's the value of a year? Okay. Like, a year is short, a year is long. It depends how you look at it, right? But in terms of like class, if you have class once a week for 2 hours and someone offers a statement that you on its face disagree with or don't like the place it was coming from, like that's the point. And I found during the few years leading up to the pandemic that my older students, my senior elective world religion students, were becoming immune to respectful argument. They were so risk averse. It was, let's get through class and let's not discuss. And I found the opposite, is that when we were all thrust back into graduate school this past year with people literally from all over the world, that there was a joy, there was a playfulness. There were some intense ones, no doubt. There were some intense ones surrounding identity and all the major cultural topics we're dealing with in this country, for sure. But I found more times than not, there was a joy that we could get back into theory and method and discussion and disagreement and then go have a beer after class. And
well, disagreements today seem like we're disagreeing, so we're not even we're avoiding disagreement, because if we disagree, maybe we won't be friends anymore. Maybe we can't associate with each other. Whether that's in the workplace or not, it's challenging.
I would pass that back to you two, so I don't talk too much tonight. But some of my best friends in the world, heck, my wife, we have serious differences of opinion, and it's what makes us whole. I don't know what being around people who are all the same benefits anyone. And I don't want to sound like the old guy on the podcast, but I don't know how life becomes rich and vibrant without diversity of opinions.
And so this is where I want to give a shout out. And John, we're going to have to connect you after this. We have a friend named Sophie Barron who started a company that now is getting its own TV show called The Conversationalist. And her whole mission is trying to break out of the echo chambers that have developed for Gen Z, where they only hear their own opinion back in their ear. So her whole thing is break out of your echo chamber. So we will make that connection, remind me, because you guys will absolutely hit it off. But I think, unfortunately, because we all are in social media where they have algorithms that give us what make us get dopamine and serotonin hits, we don't get those hits when we see a differing opinion, something that's controversial, something that may upset us or differ from, what we feel in our gut. But we get serotonin and happiness when we see people agreeing with us, and it helps us double down on our opinion. And so because we're so enriched in this social media technology generation, that now is being amplified significantly. And I think I will be very interested to see how your students who have been at home, probably not super engaged in conversation with their classmates over the past 2 years, who have been born in this technology, cell phone, social media generation, how when they are faced with extreme differing opinions, how many of them raise their hand? How many of them look down? How many of them go to the bathroom because they're so uncomfortable with where the conversation's going? They want to remove themselves from the situation. We're going to have to do episode number 3, I guess is what I'm saying. And in a year is like, I don't know if the younger generation can handle the uncomfortableness.
What about the middle generation, our generation, Sam? What about the older generation too? I personally think that problem spanning to John's students, it's not just the young people. It's everyone. in America now. Not everyone. I mean, that's a generalization, obviously, but like, you know what I mean? Like the broader idea that this is something that us as people in 2022 need to think about and discuss.
Yeah, I would just say that as a short answer, we're continually learning how to use technology, which will be with us for the rest of our lives, right? Just how to use it without it using us. I think that's probably my quick answer, is that how do we use it? It's just a tool. As with all tools, the good, the bad, the ugly, it all comes with it. I think that's the only thing, is in each person's different. My 4.5-year-old son now, like he saw me this morning. I was combing through my notes from this last year to jot some ideas down for tonight. And he looked at me when he woke up. I got up early this morning and he was like, "You're on screens, Dad. Can I be on screens?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah. Yes, you may." And our rule is usually not before noon. Like we get up in the morning, we exercise, we go play, we do, other things. And then we'll let him have some screen time after lunch. But he was like, "You're on screens in the morning. Can I be on screens in the morning?" Yes. So how do we use it so that it's not using us? And I think that for any of us, that's a good question to ask ourselves every day. Why are we using it and to what end?
We've become so significantly reliant on technology, for better or for worse, that it is tough. I was asked some questions recently about a hypothetical virtual world, this 3D metaverse for this project I was doing. And they were asking me some opinions on security and, the ethics behind various situations in these rooms, harassment and, people being rude to each other, and what features would you want and to handle these situations if someone was harassing you in this 3D metaverse? And I said, nothing. Like, you can't just hit a button and like escape from problems in the real world. And so I don't know if that's necessarily the right answer or not. We obviously need tools in place, but that is an extremely scary and interesting world that I think inevitably is going to come. Parker has one of those goggles. It's wild. I don't know if you've ever used them, Cuba. Like, they're pretty legit, and you feel fully immersed in a different world. And so we are going to run into a ton of ethical dilemmas and questions that hopefully people from Harvard are going to figure out how to solve, because I think we're going to run into a lot of issues with policing and safety and how people handle and are themselves in this new. It's scary. It's crazy. I feel like I'm in a movie.
I want to bring this to a little bit of a positive as we're talking about technology. So I went to Dead and Company on Saturday evening. Grateful Dead with John Mayer, and it was my first show, and goddamn was it an amazing show. The music was incredible. Everything about the camaraderie and the culture was just super cool to see. But I had this main takeaway from the event, and I said this to my friend who was sitting next to me. We were in like the third deck, and we could see everything below us with the pit and everyone. And I said, like, holy shit, there are thousands, tens of thousands of people here, and no one is on their phone. No one is holding up their phone to take a video. No one is holding up their phone as if, like, you look at a Justin Bieber concert, everyone, all you see is light from the phone. And it was kind of crazy to see, because that has become not normal for me to see. And it was just like really freaking cool to watch people for 4 hours fully engaged in the moment of just enjoying the music and the people around them. And it gave me a little hope, honestly, John and Sam. Like, it was really cool. It was really cool. I don't know if you've ever been to a Dead show.
That's wild. No, I was joking before that we started it, right? I spent the beginning of the week with Dave Matthews and the end of the week with Rage Against the Machine. So it felt like a full week. and there's it's a balance to life. Like, you go to a live show to enjoy the live show. And I get it if you get your phone out for a minute or you record a section of your song or something like that, but you're there to experience it, but not through a 3-inch screen. And anybody who's been to a show and recorded it, you know that the second you go back to rewatch it, you are completely and utterly left down because the sound quality is awful and the video's shaking, so you get nauseous. So it's like there's really no reason. That's why I say a quick picture. I get it. I do that. But there is something about human connection and immersion that I think is key. And I don't want to say we lost it, but I think people have been so worried about performing for so long that as soon as you feel what it's like to connect again, or I don't want to project on, or maybe for some of these younger people to connect for the first time, to really feel a sense of connection outside of your just family and friend group, that's available to you. And I hope that to come back full circle, like I hope that that's what we can sort of reinvigorate as part of that academic process in my classes. I want students connecting. I want students understanding. I want students disagreeing, right? Having these healthy arguments, because that's what makes this life valuable, right? Is that it's finite. You only have a short amount of time. And I think that's what I always found so fascinating. I remember the first time I learned about the Greek gods and how much certain humans pitied the gods because they couldn't die, and so everything lost value. We touched on this in our first episode, right? And so everything became there was no intensity to life. I gave up a year of my life, right? I missed huge moments in my children's lives this last year. There was a sacrifice to that. I missed moments with my wife. There was sacrifice to that, right? I have an aging mother. There was sacrifice to that, right? But there's also investment in other places in the hopes that you can benefit something larger than yourself. And so that connection at your dead concert, right? And the connection we make on having a conversation like this tonight, it's possible in all these different realms and all these different avenues of our life, outside of sports, outside of music, outside of podcasts. People can connect whenever they want. And I will say this, sometimes it is through technology. It can be used as quite possibly the greatest connector if we just understand that it's a tool and it's not full human connection. And I'll stop there.
It's, I think, the correct way to look at where hopefully technology is going to take us. I mean, we're in 3 different cities right now doing this with technology, so thank God for it. And John, you mentioned the fact that you made sacrifices this past year, which is absolutely true. Missing time with your family and your mom and wife and everybody being so supportive. But I do want to highlight on the positive side, you made some pretty incredible friends in your classmates this year, right? As you mentioned, this was a cohort of, 11, 12 of you, right?
Yep.
And a very unique concept that Harvard did with this inaugural class was everyone kind of came from a different professional background, right? You being the educator, there were lawyers, musicians, people in fashion, journalism, right? So I want to give you the opportunity, totally understand that some sacrifices were made, but on the positive side, you made some incredible new relationships and you learned, I'm sure, a ton from disagreeing and agreeing with these people and spending long nights at the library with them, grinding on papers, I can imagine. Can we talk about some of maybe 1 or 2 of the really interesting conversations or lessons or topics that you learned either in or out at the bar with, your fellow classmates afterwards? I feel like just super diverse group.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the best way to summarize it all.
Essentially, you found 11 new incredible podcast guests for us that we would be so lucky to have on. Yeah,
I think the best way to describe it, and I found an unbelievable amount of humility and generosity with the people who I was in class with. And the best thing I could say is that we're all simultaneously like sinners and seekers. Is that fair? Um, we've made great decisions. We've made bad decisions. We've made positive contributions. We've made contributions that we would like to take back, right? But just yeah, and that's what I tried to get at in my earlier comment is like the diversity of experience, the diversity of opinion, the diversity of identity can help anyone if they're just open to it. I went to 2 Boston Celtics and 1 Boston Red Sox game by myself because I didn't have a friend at Harvard who liked sports. So like, if that gives you and I still was like, I love you all. I'm going to the game. And they would say some shit and talk about me and be like, this guy. And it'd just be like, it's a part of me. It's a fiber of my being. And so part of it is we all came in with this concept of like, so many people were saying like, can you handle Harvard? Like this, and again, you brought it up at the beginning of the show, and this quickly thing, like, can you master this? And not to get cliche, but I think without speaking for everyone, it came much more down to like, can you master yourself? Can you work on, not that you would reach an end goal, can you begin to do the things, to enroll in the right classes, to surround yourself with the right people, to maintain balance in life where you can study your tail off, but then also go out for drinks. Like just if that's your thing, I don't want to project on anybody who doesn't drink tonight, but you know what I mean? Where do you find balance? How do you make sure that you're worrying about yourself and not this external thing that is either your job, your university? It really is about you. You can't control what other people are doing, but you can always control yourself and your reaction. And I learned that from my 11 classmates in 11 different ways, across age, across gender, across sexuality, across race, across culture, across religion, sitting in a room where you have to be, and I say this, it takes effort, but it's the most important effort that you can make, right? The term is called relational entanglement. It's something I learned this year, right? Is that how you treat one person, how one person feels when they leave your presence, that relational entanglement is going to affect their relationship with other people. And as soon as you become aware, hyper aware, you feel it. You don't think it anymore. You feel it. That relational entanglement is how I speak to you, Parker, tonight. How I speak to you, Sam, tonight has the ability to affect your relationships with other people. You two have the power to say things to me tonight that could affect the energy that I, put my kids to bed with tonight, right? Or how I have a conversation with my wife or my mother about how this podcast went right after this ends, right? That relational entanglement was the most profound lesson I learned. And again, I say I learned. I felt it. You could feel it sitting in a room of people from all over the place who come with an incredible amount of beautiful diversity. And how you show up and how you express yourself matters. And the ripple effects that people talk about are real. It's just whether or not we take ourselves seriously enough to care about others at that level.
And I think it goes probably both ways, right? Like it could be positive and negative and everything in between. And I think that is something that I think as a young adult myself, I'm trying to understand and still learn and still figure out and, try to, they always say try to be the best version of yourself every day. Every conversation you have, make it, an intentional conversation and whatnot. But then there's also times when you just don't feel it. But it's cool. That's really awesome. Is there like a specific example, a specific story that comes to mind where relational entanglement like you really felt it and experienced it?
Um, it's two people who took care of me when I was in a really, really rough spot. So about early November, um, I was told by my administration that, and again, Sam, you talked about the enrollment for my class. So I only get to teach my religion class. Parker, you're not as familiar with my class, but I'm an elective, so I also have to do marketing in order to get an enrollment for my class. And so the full shutdown year, followed by me not working for a year, doesn't bode well when you need 130 some kids a semester to sign up for your class.
Hmm.
And so I was told in early November by my administration that they needed a minute long video describing the class to prospective students who are about to pick their electives for the year, right? And we have course registration week. Every public high school in the country has it, right? And they're like, John, give us a video. And relational entanglement, I was just talking to some good friends and classmates, and I was really down because I was like, how do these kids, A, they don't really know who I am. How do you describe religion in a public school and the value of it in a minute? I was like, this isn't possible. Like, I don't even know how to do this, and I feel like I'm pretty creative. And two of my classmates, Phil Picardi and Maggie Rogers, came to me and just said, we'll help. And Phil's an unbelievable talent. He's talented in so many different ways. But he pretty much asked me to send him some ideas, and he pretty much wrote the script for this video. And Maggie, we went over to Maggie's apartment and recorded it, and she made a cameo at the end. We had a little fun with it and published it, and boom, the class was fully registered. And they're like, "You're welcome." And that was like 2 weeks before finals. And what I mean by relational entanglement, at this point, August, September, October, I was traveling for 15 weeks straight. I was tired. I was nervous about finals coming up. Just all the stress of any undergraduate, graduate student, we all feel it. And that relational entanglement, I physically felt better. I emotionally, mentally felt better. Like someone out there who had just gotten to know me went out of their way. They both have extremely busy lives to spend an hour and a half, 2 hours and do this video with me. And I don't know how else to say thank you, but that's the example of relational entanglement where someone's like, no, I can pause my life for a few hours and do this with you and make your life exponentially better from a little bit of effort.
I want to add to this point because I'm glad you brought this up. You have some amazing friends and classmates now through this program. This concept of relational entanglement, I think, ties beautifully into religion and where religion stems from, which is our need as humans to be in a community of some sort, right? And to your point of people pause their lives to help make your life better, I was watching some videos and starting to learn a little bit of anthropology, I guess, on just the history of how humans have evolved and how we lived in communities, and you take care of the elders, and the elders have the wisdom, but they don't have the physical abilities, so the younger people take care of them. That concept of relational entanglement is not net new. It is something that is probably ingrained in our DNA as a survival mechanism that we've needed over the years. And as we've evolved and maybe become a little bit more self-reliant with non-human forms of assistance like technology, we maybe have forgotten a bit of this concept of relational entanglement and the fact that, one, it's okay to ask for help. Two, it's okay to give help. And you need to sometimes rely on others to achieve things and get to where you want to go. And so I think it's cool that it essentially is rooted in religion, that concept, John.
I think it's rooted in humanity, which one of our contributions is religion, or what we've come to call religion. That that's the beautiful part of it is I see it in my students, I see it in my friends, I see it in my own children, is there is an incredible value that comes with helping just for helping's sake.
Hmm.
You know, helping just for helping's sake, because it's what else are we supposed to do with our time other than help one another? Is there anything else? Like if you got up every morning and you're grateful, as hard as it is, right? As hard as your current situation is, everybody's got different struggles they're going through. You're breathing, you're awake, and you just think to yourself, how can I help somebody? Your whole life can shift. And I just say that for my own personals, you know, because I enjoy getting up in the morning. It's like, how can we help today? And I tell you, every single day I fail. I get angry when I don't want to. I'll sit and do my breathing and meditation in the morning and say, all right, let's go back to work today. Let's recommit. Let's try not let anger come out. Let's not let frustration come out. And almost every single day it comes out. And then you got to get back and try again the next day. But the relational entanglement, I think, is maybe our greatest way out of the current situation we're in. And I mean that broadly. I mean that in all the consternation, the real suffering, the real violence, the real marginalization, everything that's out there. I would like to believe that this relational entanglement could be the way out. And at least for the next year, if not longer, I am going to try and instill this concept with my students. I've already started with my own children, and we'll see. Because I think like if we're going to spend our time on this planet, we can at least try and make things better instead of worse.
Retweet that. I mean, love that. Every bit of that. All right, John. You know we're going deeper. I got another question for you. It's nice and deep. So, I wrote it down mid-conversation, and I'm pumped about it. What's a question that you were pondering this entire experience over the past year, and you're still pondering today?
Oh boy. Literally can say like still pondering to this very moment. It's a two-part question, but it's the same question. It's just whether or not you make it into a singular sentence. When do you act versus when do you reflect? That's what's been at the forefront of my mind easily for the last year, but probably a little bit longer. Right when I was starting to think about pretty much quitting my life for a year, my professional life for a year. That was the big question, was do I take action now or do I step back and reflect? And so with that, I think any person that I looked up to, right? I don't want to use the term enlightened being because that's got a lot of religious connotation, but what would I say? Any person with wisdom that I follow, that I admire, has always had extreme lengths of time period where they are just in deep reflection. And so I think that when it comes to decision making, when do you act? When do you reflect? I can go even more detailed. It's like, when do you talk? When do you shut up? That was negative. Let's go positive. When do you offer comments and when do you offer listening? Right? And so any decision you make, and this is why, let me get to why this question is still on the forefront and still is something that I don't think I'm going to get an answer to, is that in actuality, I've come to believe there's really no right or wrong decisions. You just do your best to make a better decision. That's why I keep thinking about this, like when do you act, when do you reflect, right? Because there's loss and gain with every single decision, right? And if we can remember that always, there's no like, yes, this is a great idea. No, it's a good idea, but there's also going to be a cost as a result of you doing something, right? So if I take action and do something, something's not getting done. If I stop and just reflect and think, something's not getting done, right? And so when do we take action? When do we pause and reflect? Right. And so where I'm at now is I've done so much thinking and so much reflecting that I know that there are going to be decisions I make this summer, this upcoming year, that people will be hurt by every single decision I make. Know this, right? Know this. I'm not with my family right now while we're recording this podcast. I'm not with my friends at the Cubs game. I'm with you. Choice, action. And after a period of deep reflection, I said, the hour with Parker and Sam, exponentially more important than a baseball game. Or I can sacrifice that hour with my children, right? But people are going to be hurt. They're going to be disappointed, and that's okay. And so if we can come to that understanding, I think we'll be more at peace. And I think, without going too long here, that's why we need to study history. That's why we need to study religion. That's why we need to study cultures, right? We need the stories of heroes. We need the stories of villains. We need the stories of wisdom and teaching. Why? It's to help all of us on the path, right? That's what I want to do as students. You fill them with all these possibilities. You fill them with all these stories and all these understanding so that when they enter the world, right, where they have to survive on their own, where you actually, your podcast is fulfilling a need in young people's lives. Because when they start, they don't have to start at the beginning if they've done enough groundwork. And that's why I do what I do, is because every morning I have to wake up and ask myself, do we act on this or do we reflect? That's the question I'm asking myself. Do I reflect on this, or is it time for me to get up and do something? So like when we get into those conversations, all I can say is that for what you're doing with Elevation Nation, like that continuity of purpose, to me, that's love. Elevation Nation would have dried up a long time ago if you didn't have a continuity of purpose. There's a purpose for this. And even on the times you're like, why are we doing this? What are we doing here? Why are we spending all this time? There's a continuity of purpose. I find the same thing, this continuity of purpose, and asking that question and trying to help young minds ask themselves those same questions so that when it's time for them to do this on their own, they've experienced and thought about enough that they don't have to start at the beginning.
Man, now you got my whole mind thinking. I actually have been thinking about this for a long time, about not a long time, well, the past few months, about the idea of like there's no right or wrong way to do something. You know, your right may be the consensus of the group of how to do something, but that in your mind, like in your mind, you paint that picture, but like, who wrote that rule? Like, right? Like, who created that idea that that is the way that you're supposed to do something? Like, humans just in general, like, we all come up with our own, like, the idea is like we created our realities, right? Who says what's right and wrong? Obviously, you know, there's more what's morally right and what's morally wrong. But beyond that, like, who is it to determine that I can't, that this decision isn't the right thing or wrong thing for me? And this is something I've been thinking, asking myself and deeply sitting, like, you know, I write a bunch of notes in this little notebook, and like, I'm like, I think it's nice and serendipitous that you brought that up, because I've been literally questioning that too.
Yeah. Well, let's get into this a little bit. I mean, we could dive in with real concrete examples. So, like, it's really radical to challenge power structures, right? In terms of act versus reflect. So, like, something that I would say is like some of the best leaders, and I got this from one of the lectures that I had at the Harvard Business School. I took a course, the J-term course there, called The Spiritual Lives of Leaders. Loved the title. It's an incredible experience, right? And this concept came out of it that said great leaders are the masters of gesture. Talking about acting versus reflecting, acting versus reflecting. So sit with me. Let's like go back in history. Think of like Mahatma Gandhi, right? Famous. I'm trying to use examples that people might at least have access to, right? Gandhi and fasting pretty much got the world's most powerful colonial empire to leave without a war because of his fasting, right? Rosa Parks not giving up her seat in Montgomery, right? Like more recent ones, I'm thinking like when he was installed after Benedict, Pope Francis, right? Washing feet during Holy Week, right? Or even someone like Greta Thunberg, right? Not going to school and taking boats across oceans to attend conferences rather than fly, right? This has nothing to do with politics or any of that. It's simply saying that these people are masters of gesture, of action. Their actions are based on reflection, are based on thought, and so they're doing things that will then spur massive conversation, and I dare I say massive movements because of the period of reflection they've taken and their ability to understand action and to surround themselves with people that help them understand action, when to take action. And I think that's critical in whatever movement you're trying to do, whatever point you're trying to make. And I think that's part of what I learned this year.
Is that concept rooted in the need to earn respect of the people that follow you? So I'm thinking back to when you coached hoops, when David Hess, another podcast guest, coached me in hoops, and comparing that to when I played football.
Yeah.
And how I felt disrespected by the football coaches, that they didn't know me, they didn't care about me. How they coached me was very aggressive and not empathetic. And then the juxtaposition between that and playing for Hess and you and Ambrose, and how you tried to get to know me, how I wanted to be led. I saw sacrifices that you guys made yourselves in order to be successful. So you led through these actions as well. And it almost implied you proved the mutual respect. Is that why this action concept is so important for these leaders? Because people see that they're not just speaking, they're doing as well?
This is fantastic, by the way. It was both of your comments. And I want to answer what you just said, Sam, and also what Parker brought up about ethics and ethical concerns, right? Let's take the virtue of beauty just for a second. Let's try and connect this let's zoom out a little bit and just think of beauty. When we think of beauty, we often think of the aesthetics of something, what things look like, right? We look at human bodies. We look at art. We look at fashion. We listen to music, right? We read poems. Think of beautiful architecture, right? Beautiful landscapes. It's a lot of it is this scene aesthetic beauty. And the question that you just asked, Sam, and the concept that you just brought up, Parker, I would answer this by saying our conduct is what is beautiful, what can be beautiful. It can be the ethical answer to all of this, right? So that we can admire, we can honor, we can accentuate our differences, right? I don't know if you would all agree with me, but I think human creativity, it manifests in literally unlimited ways. And so that our conduct, this relational entanglement, it can become so beautiful when it's infused with our ethical values, right? Whether or not what we're doing, what we're saying, how we're showing up in the world is allowing for other people to flourish, or is how I'm conducting myself in front of a classroom, is that diminishing a student's ability to reach their full potential? If the energy and the words that I'm bringing, even actions that I'm bringing to a classroom, if that is diminishing the capacity for a young person to reach their potential, I need to recalibrate. And ready for this? I need someone, if I don't see it, which I hope I see it, but if I don't see it, I need one of my colleagues, or maybe a boss. I would never put it on the students, but I hope I can create an atmosphere that if I don't see it, one of those students would be like, you need to see this, or I didn't like it when, or could you fix when you do this? That level of honesty, to go back to the beginning part, right? That ability to be like, no, that didn't work, and here's why. And for me to have done enough work on myself to be prepared instantly to hear that, even though I'm feeling a flood of emotions, to be like, wait, this person just said no. I must have missed something. We can't all see our blind spots. And so when someone brings us an opportunity to shed some light on something we can't see, that's a gift. And I think that's what I hope this next year in my life in the classroom will consist of, is being prepared for those moments.
This is the challenge that I keep coming back to, though, is that one person, let's say hypothetically, tells you no.
Yeah.
One person tells you that this is not the way that you're supposed to do something or think about something. But you, in your right mind, think that that is the right thing. That is the way you want to go. But there is someone maybe in a more powerful situation than you, has, a little power over you or whatnot, or I don't know. That is the challenge that I think I struggle with as a young adult. And I think a lot of people struggle with as a young adult, is that you may think you're right. And when we're asking ourselves the question of what is right, what is wrong, and having the difficulty finding the difference between the two, but then someone who might have more experience or is older than you telling you that that isn't the right way, then we just gravitate towards that as the right answer just because they have more credentials or more years of experience. But what my belief is could essentially be right still. That's the challenge I'm struggling with right now.
I feel you. I hear you on that. And all I would offer you is that two distinct and at times conflicting opinions can be true at the same time. And that's okay. Two different truths can both be true. And as long as both parties know that, there will be, if not peace, at least understanding.
Huh.
Can I bring up a horrible example of this? A good example, but a horrible one. And I may have brought this up on the last episode, so I apologize. But when I was in Hebrew school, probably used to be like kind of okay. Skinhead children, ages like 8 to 18. Skinhead kids without their parents sitting up on the stage, and he filled the audience with diverse Jews, African Americans, international young kids, different religions. and he let them ask them questions. And you heard the hate and the intense feelings from these people on stage. And it got me watching this back 15 years later, 20 years later, my blood boiling. And then I started to, this is probably the first instance I can remember where I learned the concept of empathy, because they brought out these students, these kids, their parents. And you heard then the parents answer questions as well. And you started to realize, if I put myself in this kid's shoes and I was born in rural southern United States to a skinhead mom and a skinhead dad where the KKK was prevalent in my town, and I knew nothing else because I didn't have educators like John, or I didn't have the internet to teach me that there are better ways to live life and there's a more moral, ethical way, would I say anything different? And I learned this concept of empathy through watching this. And that's why we're going to have to introduce you to the conversationalist and Sophie, because this concept of like hearing other people's opinions, even gross things that Parker and I have talked about on this podcast, how upset we both were when Roe v. Wade has been overturned. I need to also hear what the other people are saying. And I know that upsets some people that I'm saying that, because they're like, I don't even want to understand where these people come from because they differ so much from me that I could never understand it. And I get that you may never be able to understand it, but I think you need to try to at least hear where they came from. It might be wrong, but that's how people were raised, unfortunately. And so sure. I think that ties a little bit into that concept too, Parker, of, sometimes I think we need to understand the full picture of why someone has an opinion, whether it's right or wrong.
And I think to just quickly try to address, it's a huge world we live in, yes? Huge. So we have mental illness, we have addiction, we have really self-centered, narcissistic people, and some of those people are in our lives, and some of them need help. But I think part of what you were getting at there, Sam, is like, why are some of us still so surprised that the world's a difficult spot? Like, why are some of us so surprised that life is at time hard, right? Or that some people are actually bad people, right? Or that some of your days are going to be absolutely awful. I don't know why that surprises us anymore. And I don't mean to take, God, please hear me on this. I don't mean to take the intensity out of the emotion that we all live our lives with, right? When there's a tragedy, we should fully grieve that tragedy. But it shouldn't surprise us that tragedies happen and will continue to happen. Right? And I think that therein lies our own salvation. And I don't mean this in a religious sense. I mean in a wisdom sense, right? Making ourselves more present for them, but less vulnerable to them. I hope that makes sense. I want to be present for every single student that shows up in my class, or any person that walks into my life that needs help, right? I want to be present to them, right? And not shocked when they show up, right? That's what I hope, right? I've trained, and I will continue to train. I haven't reached any mountaintop, but to not be surprised anymore, but to just be aware that these people are out there. Be prepared, always asking, how can I help? How can we be there for one another? And sometimes the answer is, I don't know if it's going to get better. It might get worse, but I'm here for you. Or I don't know the answers, but let's connect you with someone who does. And can you imagine if some of us just showed up with that level of empathy and that level of compassion, but coupled with that level of honesty, right? I think one of the most powerful symbols in the history of the human race is the question mark. I don't know. And there's a beauty, I don't know. I'm not sure, right? Let's collaborate. Let's try and find out, or I'll go and look. But the absolute certainties, there are very few things in this world that I'm absolutely certain of. And I've found more peace in that.
And that acceptance is so big. You said something as well, a little bit about tragedies, which I know Parker and I just did an episode on the shooting in Highland Park, right? Yeah. Very emotional tragedy that happened. And, talking to my mom about this and other tragedies and issues that have come about in, it seems like the past couple years, things have been exponentially crazy. And my amazing, lovely mother said, sometimes, I'm so sorry that you have to deal with this crazy, horrible world. And while I appreciate that sentiment greatly, and I know she means it in a super endearing way, as I've started to learn about history, and I watched, the Chicago 7 or Chicago 6 on Netflix during the height of the Vietnam War, seeing how chaotic that situation was. These concepts of chaos and tragedy and issues within our country and in our worlds are not net new. And so to your point, John, as soon as we're able to accept the fact that more tragedies will occur, more issues and conflicts are going to happen, differing opinions are going to continue to be prevalent throughout my entire lifetime and my children's lifetime as well, the quicker I can accept that reality, I think the faster I'll be able to enjoy life. And to your point, you said immune, and I don't know if immune is necessarily the word I would choose, so I'll disagree with you a bit, because immunity to me means that you are not impacted at all by them. So perhaps a different word could be accepting of some sort, accepting the fact that these are the realities and tragedies and issues and controversies that are going to come into our lives. Perhaps not being happy about it, to your point, feeling all the emotions that you need to feel, but knowing that this is going to continue to happen. And I think that's a really, really amazing life lesson that you just shared.
Yeah. And I think I'll just end with this, and I don't think I shared this in the last one, is that it's personal. After my father passed when I was 18, there was a little snippet in the newspaper that a neighbor cut out for me. And they knew that there was a chance I wasn't going to Illinois Wesleyan because we, as I shared in the first one, both my parents, my father was a monk, my mom was a nun before they left, right? We had no money. And there was just this little quote that just said, some men work their whole lives so that their sons don't have the problems that made men of their fathers. And I like what you just said. I haven't thought about that quote in a long time. I have it up in a scrapbook.
Wow.
I don't want to say this. I don't want to wake up in the morning in luxury. I don't want to wake up in the morning in comfort. Ready for this? But I'm also not waking up in the morning trying to be in pain. But I want to wake up with challenge. I want to wake up with purpose. And we do need things to solve. And that's all I can ask for my children, is wake up with something to solve. Wake up with someone to help. And I think that's the best way to go to bed and wake up in the morning.
That is perspective right there. I mean, to hear you say that, I mean, to have this really deep introspective conversation, serious conversation, but like as a young adult, I think, you often find yourselves thinking about the other things like, wow, I wish I could live in luxury. Wow, I could live with all the materialistic things in my life. This is what I'm striving for. And then, I think Sam and I are quickly learning, and we've talked about this many times on the episode, that the material things are the pleasure and the satisfaction that they give are temporary, and there's so much more to being contributing members of society than just accumulating things and money and wealth. And I think it's a thing that I try to remember and remind myself on every day is like, why am I waking up every day? It's to be a good boyfriend at this time, a good son, a good friend. I want to contribute at my job, make a difference in the world, but then at the same time, just enjoy my day and go to bed knowing that it was a good day and I got the most out of that day. Rather than sitting and, I went to a store and I bought a really nice watch, or I, showed off to my friends that I went to this thing. It's funny, bring it back to the Grateful Dead concert. My friend said, is like, are you going to take a video and share it on your Instagram? I said, I didn't even think about that. Are you? He's like, no. Why do I need the people? I'm not here if I don't post. And I'm like, damn right we're not here. No one knows we're here because we didn't post. And that's what's beautiful about it. And that's what made that experience just a teensy bit better.
Love it, Bart.
So, John, this has obviously been an incredible conversation, as we would have expected. And I know you got family and children to attend to. So we want to ask you, there's a bit of controversy around this section, this new segment we added in. Specifically, shout out Joey Lane. John hated your mental motto, and we got into some great discussions about it all together. And this is why I freaking love Elevation Nation, is because we're able to connect guests and have really insightful conversations. We don't need Harvard Divinity School to have these debates. We have Elevation Nation. So, John, you showed us a tattoo earlier today. Perhaps that's your mental motto, but we want to ask you, coming back for round 2 on the podcast, what is your mental motto?
First off, nothing but love and respect, Joey Lane. And that to me is like maybe the best example of how someone can own their mental motto, someone can disagree with their mental motto. There was a group chat with some Elevation Nation close followers, and Joey fully explained himself. I listened. I totally heard where he was coming from, and I was like, great. He was like, great, and we moved. That's what this country needs. That's what everybody needs, right? So anyway, Joey, look forward. I'll buy you a beer next time I see you. I was thinking about this from the time you asked me to come back on. And you heard a bit of it through the conversation tonight. So I'll say I've been working on the wording of it, but I think, so it's still in draft form, but that's an academic answer. It's close to being finalized, but here it is. So the current motto I'm working with personally is suffer a little more so others suffer a little less. And I mean that in conversation, right? Where you really want to get a word in and you're in an argument and you want to hammer someone and ruin their day and embarrass them in front of a bunch of other people. Or you can just let that public conversation go and then maybe talk to them in the side. All right. You can do it in traffic, right? You can do it in the morning with your roommates, your friends, your family. Shit. I told my mother I wasn't going to swear. There it is. I said it. Shit. You could do it with taxes, right? I mean, everybody wants no taxes, but wants a perfect country without, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm not a millionaire, but I mean, if I have to pay a little bit more so that someone who's on has to suffer a little less, okay. Like, I'm just at this point where I can't, and I'm not trying to be self-righteous here. I'm just trying to say, like, it's become very hard for me to see suffering and to not try and alleviate it. Not like I'm trying to solve everything at all, but just like that question of help. And sometimes it can be the littlest things is just how can we help? If everyone just got up and said, I'm not telling you the right thing to do, I just want to help. I'm just trying to help you. I'm trying to help this group. I'm trying to help this family. I'm trying to help this kid. That's what I'm hoping. And individually, it might feel like a little suffering initially, but that eventually you can alleviate the suffering of other people. And I think if we each just try and do that in our own way, that's what I really wanted to get across. And anybody listening to this is just ask themselves, like, every single day, whether it's the grocery store, at work, with your family, the complete stranger, like, you know it when you see it, you know it. And just try and help other people alleviate their suffering a little bit. You'll feel better for it. I can guarantee that.
An absolutely incredible draft mental motto, I must say. And I want to just quickly highlight the fact that you said, so they suffer a little bit less. You didn't say so that they don't suffer at all. Because to go back and holding true to your earlier point that you enjoy waking up with not necessarily fully in comfort, with a little bit of pain and some challenges to solve for the day. And that's what makes humans go and work and innovate and improve and live and enjoy their lives. And so you're not making these sacrifices to fully alleviate the world and everyone else's pain. It's to...
I don't mean to laugh at that.
Slowly improve it a bit.
It reminded me of... oh, gosh, I'm going to have to go back. Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins. This was...
Of course, you bring up this. You have to bring up Hitch. It wouldn't be a podcast episode if you didn't.
I'm trying to remember who it was. The documentary was called like Collision or something. And he was asked a hypothetical question that if he could eliminate the world of believers of any faith, would he do it? And Hitch was like, of course not. Like, that would take all the fun out of like human wrestling with existence. Even though Hitch, I'm going to send that clip to you, but I know it's out there. And Richard Dawkins, who's an evolutionary biologist, who I've got a few of his books right here, he was furious at Hitch. He said, why wouldn't you do this? And like society would advance and people wouldn't. And Hitch was like, no, it would take the value out of meaning, out of getting, of striving, of refining your opinions and having their opinions refine your own, like this interplay of humanity. And I think the same thing goes with suffering. As soon as you're born into a world of suffering. And I don't mean to sound Buddhist there, but it is. You're cold, you're hungry, and like every minute of the day, think of it. It's like you're too hot, you're too cold, you're hungry, you're full, you don't feel well, you want to do this. Like it is constant. So the suffering can't go away, but to alleviate the big stuff, we can help with.
I love it. This obviously exceeded my expectations, per usual. Like I said, Parker and I were looking forward to this for a long time, John. Again, you've been a busy man, making a big impact, helping to alleviate some pain and suffering in your family and your friends' lives. You're back now in Illinois, and on behalf of Elevation Nation, I mean, this is a little secret thing that we're gonna have to say, but when we have new guests on the show, they say, what is an episode I should listen to? Every single time Parker and I say to listen to your episode. And so that's how much you mean to us, the impact that you've had on us on Elevation Nation. And, we can't thank you enough for being a mentor and an advisor and a friend to both of us. So thank you.
I enjoyed this so much. I mean, I was like, I've had, I ponder a lot of questions. Sam knows that. Sometimes Sam doesn't give me the eloquent answer I need. John, you always give the eloquent answer I need. And, I just can't wait for the next one, because this certainly won't be the last time. And I just appreciate you so much. And I can't wait till we're all in person and we can all grab a beer and continue the conversation, because I think it never ends. And just, I honestly, just it's so cool to be able to reflect over the past year and a half when we first had the conversation, and now we have this conversation. So much has happened in all of our lives, and I'm lost for words because I don't have much more to say. It's just been a great conversation. I can't thank you enough for it.
No, it's being here and talking about things. And again, we're all on the path. We're just at different points. I'm a few months older than you guys. Right? So I've had the opportunity to think about these questions for a few days longer than you two have. And I'd say that for anybody else who's listening, it's like I said, we get to places at different points. And I know if we're lucky enough, I hope to, we have another conversation like this at some point in the future. We are going to be at different places, right? Life changes quickly. And so it's just a matter of really sort of honoring who we are and where we're at. And I really look forward to hearing who you've become and where you are at the next time we talk. So beers on
Elevation Nation. Until next week, peace. John,